Okay, so today we are doing section 9.4, solving problems with inequalities and equations. We have done this. It shouldn't be anything new. The only thing that it does is it adds some story problems into us. Now, when you think of story problems, one of the things to watch out for is if they do linear, more than likely you're going to be able to write it in slope-intercept form. Okay? If they do a quadratic or an absolute value, most of the time they're going to give you some hint on the equation. They may even give you those equations. So it's mostly the linear ones that we had to write as I was doing the homework. So it says algebraically versus graphically. Today's lesson begins with an exercise to solving problems both ways. So we have this system, and they said, by now you should be good at solving this type of problem by graphing. Solve the system. Okay, so what shape or what function is our first one? Bless you. It's a parabola. It's a quadratic, right? So this is a parabola. That means it's a U shape. Okay, well if I have a U shape, what key information do I need to know before I can graph it? Bless you. What do I have to have? I need a vertex. Okay, and my vertex is at 2, 4. And I need to know my A, which is 1, so it's a normal curve. Okay, I also need to make sure that I know that I am doing equations, not absolute values. So I go to 2, 4, 2 and 4. And this is a normal curve, so I'm going to go right 1, up 1, mirror image on the other side, right 2, up 4. Okay, and it's an equation, so we connect our dots. Okay, now my second one is what? This is a line, or linear. So when I'm doing a line, what key pieces do I need to help me graph it? I need a starting point, which in this case, my starting point is my y-intercept, which is 0, 0. And I need a slope, which they told me is 2 over 1. So up 2, right 1. So I go to 0, 0. I go up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. Okay, so if I connect those dots, can we see our solutions? Yeah, we have a solution where they intersect each other. Right here and right here are my solutions. Because when we're doing equations, it's where they touch each other. It's their intersection points. So my solutions are at 2, 4 and at 4, 8. All right, now it says, how do I solve this system algebraically? So what can I do to solve this system? What can we do to solve a system algebraically if I want to know what the y's or the x's equal? Set them equal to each other. They're both y's, so I want to know where those two y's are the same. So just set them equal to each other. Now granted, this isn't as easy when it's two linears as it is when it's two linears because we have a quadratic in there. So as I put my quadratic down, and my line I need to remember that this side has to be in standard form before I can play with it, before I can combine like terms and set it equal to 0. So I need to change this to standard form. Okay, so what do I need to do first to change this to standard form? Okay, so I've got to expand it out. So when I distribute this, I get x squared minus 4x plus 4, and I still have another plus 4 there. So now if I combine like terms and I bring over my 2x at the same time, I get x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. And every time I'm asked to solve, I always need it to be equal to 0 when I have a quadratic. So I take this up, and I can't isolate because I have an x squared and an x. So what's the first thing I'm going to try? Can I factor it? Okay, can I factor this to make my life easier? So I break it apart, and x squared becomes an x and an x. My signs are the same, and they're both negative. And the only way I can get an 8 is a 1 times an 8 or a 2 times a 4. Well, which one's going to help me get to a 6? 4 and 2. But have I solved it at that stage? Am I done? No, you have to set each of those pieces equal to 0. So I had a lot of kids on the test that would get to this point right here and be like, I put a box around it. You wanted me to solve by factoring. Well, you factored it, but you didn't finish the problem of setting each piece equal to 0. X equals 2, and plus 4, x equals 4. Okay, but is that my answer to my overall question? That's just my x values. So you need to plug back in to get y value. So if I just take, of course, I'm going to use the line. It's the easiest one. So if I take y and plug in the 2 right here, well, 2 times 2 is what? 4. So there's that one. If I took that same equation and I plug in the 4, well, 2 times 4 is 8. And I got the same thing. The biggest thing is we're not used to solving for ordered pairs algebraically. We're used to just finding the x algebraically, so it's a little bit trickier that way. Okay, now it says solve this equation. By now you should be good at solving that equation algebraically. Solve. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite it because I hate that it's up at the top. Okay, what's the first thing I need to do to solve that? Minus 5. So I have a negative 2, absolute value of x plus 3 equals a negative 8. Okay, now what? Divide by a negative 2, which we're very grateful we divided by a negative 2 or we would have no solution, right? X plus 3, absolute value. A negative 8 divided by a negative 2 is positive 4. So now my absolute value is alone, and it's equal to a positive. So what do I need to do at this stage? break it into two parts. X plus 3 equals 4. X plus 3 equals a negative 4. Minus 3. This one gives me x equals 1. And this one gives me x equals a negative 7. Does this one have ordered pair answers? No, this has one set. So there is no y in the equation. So all we need are x values. Okay, which is important to think about when we go and do the next one, because it says, can we solve this equation graphically? Okay, well, it's not super hard. We could use our graphing calculator, but we could do this one by hand too. This is we're going to set the first equation is an absolute value. So we'll put in y1 as negative 2 x plus 3 plus 5. And then our second equation will just be the line at negative 3. That's all we're doing, is doing those two things. So my first equation, well, I'm going to graph the second one first because it's easy. Y equals negative 2 is just a horizontal line that crosses the y-axis at negative 3. This is an absolute value. Where's its vertex? Where's that absolute value's vertex? Negative 3 and 5, right? And its A is 2, but it's concave what? Down. So we need to go down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1. Same thing on the other side, mirror images. Down 2, left, down 2, left 1, down 2, left 1, down 2, left 1. Did we get the same intersections? Is that x value the same right there? X is what? What's that x value right there? Negative 7. What's this x value? 1. And I don't need to worry about the y value because they already told me my y is going to be a negative 3. So y, oh sorry, I just wrote x. Okay, positive 1. Okay, so now let's look at this as a story problem. Because life doesn't just exist in just straight equations. We kind of wish it did, but real life is mostly story problems. So it says, Hugo and his new job. Way to go, Hugo, getting job, working, earning those money. Okay, Hugo recently started a new job he is very excited about. With his new job, for every $50 of merchandise he sells, he gets $5 added to his weekly paycheck of $100. Write a function to represent the amount of money, A, Hugo will have after selling a certain amount of merchandise, M. What is this relationship? Is it linear, quadratic, exponential, or absolute value? What's going to happen? Did they say it's doubling every time? No, so we know exponential's out. Okay, so absolute value means I'd have a V. Would that make sense as far as money? Like I could sell at $1 and get a negative on both sides? No, that doesn't make sense. Okay, so what about quadratic? If linear didn't, if absolute value didn't make sense, does quadratic make sense? No, so what's left? Linear. It makes sense that we're adding this amount every time I sell merchandise. So linear. 9 times out of 10 when you're doing linear, your equation is going to be y equals mx plus b. You may change the variables. So like they told me that I'm using a of m. So instead of an x, I'm going to have an m in my equation. Okay. So what is my b is my constant or my starting point. Well, what is constant in Hugo's life? Okay, so what's the one thing that's never going to change based on his sales? The $100. No matter what, he's going to earn $100, which is always good to look at when you go and get a sales job is, do you have a base pay or is it totally based on commission? It's very scary in this day and age to have a job that's just based on commission, because you could have a month where you don't sell anything and then you have no money. So always take that into account. So we know that Hugo is going to get at least $100 if he sells nothing. So he made no sales, he still gets $100. Bless you. Okay? Now the one thing to think about this, or to be careful of, is this $50, he adds 5. Okay? Because normally we're just used to saying, oh, well, I'm just going to add 5 for every piece of merchandise I sell, right? That's what we've done in the past. But how many pieces of merchandise or how much money in merchandise do I have to sell in order to get $5? I have to sell $50 worth. So I get $5 per $50 in sales. Okay? We're used to, when we did this before, or when I think about in 9th grade, we always did it as, oh, they're adding $1 per day, or that kind of thing. We need to take into account that $50. So you could leave it like this, or we could reduce it down to what? What would that fraction reduce down to? 1/10 of the merchandise plus $100. Okay? So it says, what is A of 200? Okay, what does this mean in context of the situation? Sometimes it's easier for me to think about it, the context, and then answer the question. What does the $200 represent? What does the 200 represent? The $200 is the merchandise. So if Hugo sells $200 in merchandise, then what are we going to find out? Then his paycheck is, and that's what we're trying to find out. So do I put the 200 where the amount is or where the merchandise is? Where the merchandise is. So this is going to be 1/10 times 200 plus 100. Well, 1/10 times 200 is just 20 plus 100. So how much is he going to make if he sells $200? $120. So his weekly paycheck is $120. Okay? I would love to know what merchandise he's selling and how much the merchandise cost. Like, did he make one sell or did he have to make 5 sales? I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of unknowns in this question. Okay? Then it says, what is, oh, I like how we magically made it a T. What is M if A of M equals 150? So what did they tell me? Is that his merchandise? It's his what? It's his paycheck. So if his paycheck is $150, he must have sold, and then we have to figure it out. So am I going to put that where the A of M is or where the M is? A of M, right? So I'm going to say 150 equals 1/10 m plus 100. Okay, so what's the first thing I need to do to solve this? Subtract the 100. That gives me 50 equals 1/10 m. So then what? What am I going to do to get m alone? If I have a 1/10 times by 10. Some people say, I divided by a 1/10. Okay, well, dividing by a 1/10 is going to give you times by 10. So m is equal to what? 500. So he must have sold $500 of merchandise. Again, I really want to know what this merchandise is. It kind of drives me crazy. Okay, since this function is linear, how many zeros are there? 1. What is the zero of this function? I don't know. We could figure it out. We could just do it by hand, or do you want to do it on your calculator? It's up to you. If it's where 0 is, where am I going to put it? Am I going to put it where the merchandise is, or am I going to put it where the amount is? Amount. Okay, so that means I'm going to get 0 equals 1/10 m plus 100. Because I always put in the y is equal to 0 for the zeros. So what's the first thing I need to do to solve that? Subtract 100. So now I have 0 subtract 100. Well, that gives me a negative 100 is 1/10 m. And then what do we do to solve that? Times by 10. So we're saying that the merchandise is a negative $1,000 is my 0. Does that even make sense? Is that even, can you owe the company money? Now granted, like if you sell Mary Kay or Lip Sense, they make you buy the product before you can sell it. Like you have to buy so much, and so you could, but in this one, no, it doesn't make sense. If x is a negative 1,000, this doesn't make sense for our question. Okay, it doesn't make sense.